1 second. Hello. You probably can't see me, and you can probably just see the guitar, which is cool because apparently I've put on weight according to the online critics. Lockdown, puppy fat. Oh well. C'est la vie. Yes, it's been a fairly inactive time. So, and there's no excuse. Anyway, look. So what have we got here? What have we here? We have a hybrid. This is made up of two parts. And hence, you can see there's a this way round sticker on there. This is a candy apple red Harley Benton standard series Squire Telecaster, no, Strat, Harley Benton standard series Strat, and it's unplayed. It's been in the kind of Reloved shed or around and about for a long time, and this is the leftovers of Carlos's build, where he bought two of these. They candy apple had a maple neck, and the black one he bought had a rosewood neck, and we swapped the necks over basically, and this is the end result. Now this is not worth much at all. This is an inexpensive guitar. I've inherited it from Carlos, but it's not really the kind of thing for me to want to. I can't just chuck it out for peanuts the way it is. There's no real point in it. Somebody can get one of these new from Harley Benton for something like 80 quid, I think, including postage and guarantees and whatever else, warranty or whatever else, it suits you. So to me, there's no point in holding on to this unless I do something to it and offer it out. And so I just think that either I'll end up holding on to it forever, or I'll give it a setup and offer it to somebody for a price that hopefully I'll just get a bit back for my effort on setting it up. And the old Harley Benton sort of story that some people complain to me about when I do Harley Benton setup videos. They'll say that Harley Bentons are good enough out of the box, and why do they need this extra stuff that I'm doing? And there's some truth in that, and I always reply by saying, look, for many people, the standard Harley Benton out of the box is adequate to just get on and play, and that's fine. But for a lot of people, it isn't. They want a bit more lower action, or a low action and choke-free bends and stuff, and you won't get that out of the box. But it's not. People think I'm being critical of Harley Bentons, and I'm not. For the money, these are, very well finished, pretty well finished guitars. I'm only stating that if you want them to go that extra mile, you have to do that extra bit of effort to them. Now this came with a left-handed. What do you call it? This thing, tremolo. So I will do this with the tremolo. Funny, it's still a right-handed thread, isn't it? Oh, it's obvious, but I'll set this up floating anyway, because that's the way to do it. So I'm going to make a presumption that this thing, when strung up, will have, if not, it'll have some maybe chokes on high bends, and if not, it's months old now. It's 6 months old, sitting just hanging up, not being played or anything. So the frets could do with polishing anyway. So I'm going to go ahead as if I'm just giving this a fret level and setup. And the truth is, I won't. I inherited it, so the guitar didn't cost me anything. If it was right-handed, I'd probably just play it and have some fun. But it was donated to me, and so I it's not perfect. There's a couple of little tiny chips in the paint where this neck is fractionally different size in the production line to the other neck. When you put it in, that goes a little edge chip, but it's sort of hard to avoid, but it's very, very insignificant. So what I intend to do is just, put my couple of hours work into this, and then offer it out to anybody who wants a left-handed Reloved guitar setup for practically nothing. So for this, I'm going to need some sacrificial strings. On the subject of sacrificial strings, let me introduce to you good old Simon sacrificial strings. Done through the post again the other day, and what a fabulous crop of sacrificial strings. 10s, 9s, 10s, 9s, you've got a pile. Now, Simon has been supplying me with these really grotty Chinese strings for ages now, but they are expressly for the purpose of sacrificial strings, and he knows it. So it's an absolute blessing to me, a boon to me to have these come in. And then occasionally Simon throws another little goodie in here, and here we've got some very good quality foil backing which I can save for pick guards and things. I prefer to do the cavities in conductive paint, because it's easier to get around, and this thing is difficult to connect up each of these cavities, or it's difficult to make them continuous. This isn't so bad because you can actually cut a square and cut the corners and plop it in and sort of pretty much make it continuous, but you have to have electrical continuity, so the paint is pretty good for that. But thank you, Simon, as ever. Hugely appreciative. So rather than mess around, I'm going to pick a set of 9s out here and sacrifice these in the spirit for which they were intended. And we'll put some good quality strings on afterwards, which itself, is a 5-hand punt. Anyway, so I'm just trying to warm up the workshop a little bit. This is a Saturday, and I'm doing a couple of hours up here, and then I'm going to go back and let's get this off for a minute. I'm going to go back and chill out for a couple of hours, and then my stepson Thomas and I are coming up later on, and we're going to go up in the roof space, and we're going to add some insulation and clear up some junk up there. But this place is been kind of untouched for years, really, used as a site office, and yeah, it's accumulated crud and crap for many years, and so it's sort of time now to clear the ceiling or clear the roof space, and that means that I can put some can I get these through? Yeah, I can get these through. I still need that off. Yeah, I can get some insulation up into there, which I'm kind of hoping for that far room to be the spray space, but I've been thinking about it since I've got here, and the construction of that space is a lot less solid, and certainly a lot less insulated than this space in here. So it may be that it makes more sense that I continue to use the little space around the corner here for the spraying for the time being, mainly because I can control the environment in there a lot better. Now, it's a shame in a way, because the big space next door around the corner, the other space, is in a sense more appropriate. But where's my other screwdriver? Yeah, it's more appropriate. However, it's not such a bad thing to change the plans like this, because if I continue spraying in the back there, then the other room actually could be set up over time as a more and more machinery-based woodworking department, which I genuinely need to have. And so it's not a bad idea to have an oversized room with less machinery rather than more, so I can add new stuff in as I can afford it, and as I can learn to use it. Oops, somebody's put the jet wash on. Yes, this is the thing that happens at the weekend. People come in here and jet wash, and my electricity bill was paying for it. So we shall see. I think we'll come to some sort of decent arrangement. Now, for some reason, this is actually proving to be oddly difficult to get this through here. Anyway, yes, it says rip here, so I ripped on the other bit. yeah, so I don't know how much of this I'll do. I'm looking at the wrong camera, you're over there. Not sure how much of this I'll do today, but that's the idea, is to get this just done, playing nicely and available for a left-hander for not much. And to make it worth selling on, rather than just giving it away, I suppose, it's necessary I do something to improve it. So this is the aim of this setup. Yeah. So later on, or at latest tomorrow, we're gonna clear up, because above the roof in that, it's the kitchen space. It used to be a kitchen for the site, but above there, there is. God, the whole lights flicker when somebody puts on the jet wash. But I better get using the jet wash on my car since everyone else does. Yeah, above there has been stored a load of crap over the years. This has been used as the site office, and there's a huge pile of dead fluorescent tubes and other stuff, and it's very kind of lean-to-ish construction. So that up on top of the roof space, there's a lot of wires snaking around where they've just connected up more bits of this space to electrical supply. It's not the most professionally done thing in the world, but it works for now. Except when you put the dehumidifier on and the heater on at the same time, and then it doesn't seem to want to work. Anyway, so yeah, we'll get up there, and the plan is to bring down all the defunct strip lights, and we'll stack them in the kitchen room for now. But once we've got them down, and I want to fit in a load of insulation, because whether or not I've got the insulation here, and whether or not that room ends up being a sawdust room or spray room, might as well have the insulation in to keep it a little bit warmer throughout the winter than it currently is. Because, as I say, it's made of a different sort of construction to this room here. And this room is, I think I mentioned before, but this room is made from panels of a refrigerated lorry, or a freezer truck, as you might say in the US today, which is amazing, really, because I came in this morning and it's actually colder in here than it is outside. That's how good this is, because it retains the overnight temperature, the ambient temperature, and then when the world outside heats up, this place still stays cold, which, when you think about it, is actually what you want it to do. It's proving that this construction really works, which is amazing. So I'm going to put these on lefty to righty. Yeah, so it's one of those things, I had to open the windows and doors to actually warm this place up to ambient outdoor temperature, and then I just thought I'd put the heater on a bit more. We're about 15 degrees now C inside here, which for me is a pleasant temperature to work in. It's not how you'd want your home, but it's not bad as a workshop space. So as you can see, I'm putting on some strings just to check the basic geometry of this first of all, and make sure that it's it's going to set up, i.e. that it's worth continuing with. Because if it doesn't work as two pieces together, then there's no point fighting it. I could go ahead and try and modify, and if it needed it, modify things. But really, with an inexpensive guitar like this, I'd be better off just taking the neck and using it for a headless project, or a left-hand build of my own sometime, where I can make sure that the geometry is right from the outset. So let's get that under there. The butterfly string tree, not my favourite kind. Actually, it's not really a butterfly, is it? Are they? Is it they? Those string trees are more like seagulls, or the way seagulls are represented in bad illustrations. Anyway, so yeah, that's the plan. Get up there and put up some insulation, and then during the week when the site is open, it's a recycling site, so I'll find out where I can dump the stuff, in which skip I can put it, and then I'll be clear of it, which is very cool. Idiot. Just going to flip that off there. Thank you. Left-hand guitar stringing is always a slight pain in the whatsits. I much prefer right-handed winding, of course. Anyway. So this would benefit probably from some fret leveling, and certainly from fret polishing, because the frets are just a bit tarnished now over the months it's been sitting here unused. So it won't be hard to get them shining nicely, but as I say, while I'm at it, let's make sure that the frets are level enough to get a nice action. So speaking of playability, I mentioned on my Facebook page yesterday that I'm at a point where I'm ready to make a second ebook, and I think one of the things that maybe I haven't talked about much ever. I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to just get quiet now at a nice temperature to put this on and just stay working temperature. That's better, just about right. Yeah, I kind of mentioned to people, made an announcement that I was ready to make or create a second ebook, and I didn't really talk about the sort of the lead up or the background to making an ebook, which I suppose in a way might make possibly an interesting video on its own in its own right. First of all, on this setup, I'm going to push in this tremolo claw all the way in until it's pretty much, well, to make sure this is flat down and solid on the deck when we start off. Okay, so obviously I'll come back, but what we're going to do is we're going to set the action here and here, check the neck relief. So I'm going to put it under in normal tuning. Now it's not going to stay stable in the tuning for now. That's noisy. One second. So I'm looking at this and I'm seeing the strings here are touching the G is touching the fret, and the reason for this is is this what Harley Benton's done? I don't know, maybe it's what I've done. It's a right-handed nut put on, so it's not, I think it was just a temporary thing. So I'm going to need to replace this nut first of all, if this is going to ever play. The alignment looks okay. That was my first concern. I'm going to make sure that this relatively unrelated neck and body work together as a unit, which they do. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is get this nut out. I'm going to use a very small screwdriver for that purpose. So I'll just get on and do that whilst we chat about life in general. Yeah, so the thing I haven't gone into detail about in any way is the making of an ebook. And it's interesting because there's the nut. Now the problem I got here is I either make a nut, repurpose plastic, the right-handed nut and repurpose it left-handed, which I'm entirely happy to do, or I use a bought left-handed nut, which is kind of expensive to add onto this. So my temptation would be to use the repurpose a left-handed nut. So let's see what I've got in the world of telly, some strat nuts. Well, I know for a fact I've got some left-handed ones around there, but they're for Andrew's strats. So standard, let's just check against the original, which is here. Yeah, so that's quite deeply cut. Let's have a look at the actual depth. Yeah, so this would give me enough height to repurpose. Look, every sucker in the world is coming to jet wash his car here on my electricity bill. Right. Okay, so in order to repurpose a nut like this, I would need to thin it down to fit, and you can use micrometers if I'd actually included them in here. This isn't I haven't got a fully sensitive one. This is a bit of a crap one, but it will give me an idea. 10.10 of an what? 0. This can't be millimeters, it's got to be inches. Thank you. Okay, 2.7 is quite a narrow one, and this will be about 3, so 3.1. So if I use this, I've got to go down in thickness, and the only question is will it give me enough height to reverse the direction? And that's absolutely fine to do. So it's a bone one. I need to sand it down. So I'll get on and do that here alongside this. A bit of a distant shot, I'm afraid, but I'll just get on and do it so we don't run out of die of boredom. Anyway, yeah, so here we go. The lights flicker and the jet wash goes off. By the way, today I'm using fluorescent light and sunlight, natural light. So that's quite an interesting visual test. Not got the ultra bright overheads on, but that's fine. 2.9, we're heading in the right direction. Nearly, a little bit too wide. Yes, anyway, back to this topic, back on topic. Yeah, I do think that the whole thing about doing ebooks, if you're like me, well, ebooks are a very attractive thing in principle, because everybody likes the idea of having a passive income. Something that you do once at the beginning, you do the hard work, and then you sell endless copies of your book for the rest of your life, all around the world, etc., etc., and you get wealthy from the fun of it. Okay, let's just look and see if we've got the actual height necessary in this thing. It's sort of got the height a bit back to front in this arrangement because it narrows down. But as long as we've got enough height to kick off with on this set here, we'll just make an assessment. Yeah, so it's a very attractive idea having a passive income. I think inventors and software designers and patent people, are experts at that. It's to do all the work and then get a kind of license paid every time someone uses X, Y, and Z of yours is a really attractive business idea. And of course, in the real world, it makes total sense, and it's far more sensible than working hard every day, using up your human labour to make money. So as a guitar tech, really, up to a point, all you can do is make money selling not your hourly labour, but selling your skills one at a time. And there's only one of me, so I'm limited to how many people want setups and how many setups I can do. This jet wash is going to be going all blasted day. So when it comes to working out the electricity bill, the site owner and I are going to have words. Right, let's get this up to pitch, if I can hear anything. funny how much that jet wash is going all weekend. Cars coming in. It's all the people who work here just come in. Okay, that's under at pitch. So just quickly, I'm going to look at the overall action. Looks not too bad. Action, we can convert the nut, and there's enough room to do that. What I also want to know about is, that's interesting, how deep that sits in there. What we want to also take care of is the curvature of the neck, the relief. So let's check that. That's got some, very little, but about enough. Just about enough. So let's get our power. Everything flickers. Definitely going to have words with the powers that be. Okay, so we'll work on the nut in a second. Let's just get the basic look of the setup. So that's a bit low for a start. So let's go uppity. We want 1.2-ish. Should be pretty much close to where we want, but this is a little too high. Anyway, yes. So the concept of a passive income is the smart businessman's dream, really, because it's just one of the only ways you're going to free yourself up from the constraints of selling your labour as a sort of as a wage slave, if you like. I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but until you have something that makes you money that doesn't require you to sell your labour, then you're charging just for your time. Yeah, people who have to use the other toilet in this place. Mine. Okay. Let's get this right. Nearly there. 2.5, 1.5, I should say. Get it right. That's about right. Okay. So we'll just retune that. Okay, we're okay on the first fret. The alignment's good. We're on all the poles, so that's playable. Now we've got to do the first fret. Yeah. So what I was saying is, anyway, the idea of passive income is pretty good. It's a pretty good idea. I wonder, can I change that over? Stick that down there. I think I might be able to. Hold on a sec. Wait. Take that camera off there. Let's take this camera off here. I think. I don't know how much memory we've got. Half an hour gone already. Sorry about this. Rattle. Come on. How'd you come? I see, that's slightly different, isn't it? Right, you come. Wire, charger, not long enough. Bugger. Well, don't strictly need it. Hold on. We can just go until it runs out. Side by side, that's the wrong way around. So that's, never mind, that is the wrong way around. Let's just go back to where we were. Sorry about this. Hold on. Yeah, it's the orientation of this that's wrong. So I have to wait until I fiddled and set something else up. Come on, in you go. Get there. Anyway, yeah, so passive income. So people who make things like, does it stay in one place? make things that pay them back, you know, that you build once, design once, and then sell multiple copies, is a great idea. And it's why people who make digital content often, you know, once they start making digital content, they get addicted to it because it gives them this permanent payback. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just get the first fret actions down to where I want them. Yeah, so anyway, I met a guy in the local area who made ebooks. And I hadn't really heard of it, or hadn't thought of doing it, or didn't really know what it took or anything. And I went round to lunch one day, and Claire and I, we sort of met these people, and the wife is a guitarist, and my husband used to be an English teacher, or still is. But he moved from being a classroom teacher to being an online tutor, and then he started making ebooks to sell, kind of revision, that kind of thing, curriculum revision stuff. And it was kind of interesting to chat to him about it, and he was, I was asking him, he said something, we were having lunch and his phone went ding, and he said, see, for example, he said, I've just sold an ebook. I was like, wow, okay. And he showed me this sort of little interface, you know, little desktop thing. What do they call those things? Oh my god, screen, home screen, where your data, it's like a, anyway, not control panel, dashboard. Gee, brain. Anyway, so he showed me this little dashboard, and it was saying, you know, book sold, revenue earned, ding, and of course it also made this little money ka-ching noise, which was horribly seductive. So we sat there kind of chatting away, and it went off again. And he said, "Oh, another one," and showed me his dashboard. And yeah, lo and behold, you have sold another ebook. You know, X amount of money in your bank. I was thinking, bloody hell, this is good. Now, he was selling these sort of revision notes things for the English curriculum, the national curriculum, and there was a sort of, you know, a standard price that those things go for, and it was very little. But the point of it was that he was selling constantly throughout the day, one or two, and here and there, three or four, you know. And I was kind of mighty impressed with that. And he was keen to help me think about, you know, could I find a way to do something with e-books? And he was very helpful in sharing his kind of information, his knowledge, but I couldn't work out how I was going to make it work for me. Do you know what? How is that? This is a left-handed nut, or have I already worked this one? This is angled left-handedly, which is very odd. Normally it would be the slope would be the opposite way around, but it's in the correct position. Maybe it is by chance a left-handed nut. Anyway, yeah. So we talked quite a bit about this, and I still couldn't figure out a way to make it work for me. But it planted a seed, and I thought about it, and I quite liked the idea of doing it. But the more I looked into it, the more I realised I didn't know anything about the technology of it. I mean, you know, I'm not shy when it comes to using the technology sort of stuff, but I really, you know, the whole making of ebooks and publishing them and all that sort of stuff seemed a little bit, when I looked into it, started to get a bit daunting. Everybody had different formats, and doing something for Apple seemed to be completely different for doing something for Amazon and or Kindle or whatever. And yeah, it just became quite a scary challenge. So I kind of, what I thought I'd do is I asked a few people, a few friends of Reloved, if they could help, and some good people were willing to sort of try and figure a way through it for me. Now, as it happened, that didn't really work out, and what I realised is I just came to understand that it was something I needed to take control of, because I'm quite good at knowing how I want something to look. I've been involved in graphic media for a long time, and so I thought, look, I can do that part of it. I need to get an understanding of the technology part, or find a technology I can use. Anyway, the bottom line is, after about a year of kind of writing content, I filmed the whole setup and took photographs and wrote all the stages once, and trying to kind of put that into a format with some help from people, and it didn't work out, and I lost sort of motivation for it. And then after that year, I came across a piece of software called iBooks Author, made by Apple, and I realised that it was kind of similar enough to the page layout programs I'd used in the past that I had some experience of. So I thought to myself, actually, you know what? I can use this. If only I. The problem was, it couldn't use it to make something compatible for Amazon. But I thought, you know what? Even if I just make an iBooks version, I'll be proud and content that I've actually just got somewhere and done this thing that I set out to do. So I began building the thing again for a second time, so I did a whole new photo shoot for it, and filming and videoing and everything. And actually, when it came to writing it and structuring it, because I'd been living with it so long and I'd done so many setups and I knew what I was doing, the process of making it was really enjoyable. And then while I was doing it, I realised that I had to think about, well, how do I sell this thing, or how do I make it available to people? Damn, I should have done this before, idiot. So when you're making an ebook, you have to think about how you're going to get it to people. How are you going to sell it? Will you sell it direct? How are you going to serve the files if you do? Are you going to sell it through someone else, like Apple's iBooks store or whatever it's called, or the Kindle store, Shopfront, Amazon? And so, it's quite a lot more complex than you first think. But what I realised is that with the iBooks Author software, what I realised was that it allowed me to make a small, compact iBooks compatible version. When I say small, I mean a limited amount of memory size, which was quite good. But it also allowed me to make a PDF version, which was, if the Apple one was, the iBooks one was about 60 megs, the PDF version of the book, which looked great on the screen, looked exactly the same, but the iBooks had some interactive bits to it that you could do, which I didn't really need. But it was more suitable, a bit more interactive. Anyway, so I realised I could use that software to make not only an iBooks version, but also a PDF version. And because just about everybody's devices, phones, laptops and everything can read PDFs, it meant that I could actually offer that version for sale direct from me, and as long as I had somewhere to send it from, I could retain control of it and keep the proceeds, rather than give it to someone like Apple or Kindle, Amazon. So I finished this thing. It was actually very pleasurable to make. I really enjoyed it. The thing is, when you're doing something you know and you enjoy and you're confident in, it just flows naturally and there's no effort really. And I knew I was I feel like in my flow or sweet spot, as people would say. And I think one of the things I learned in that is if you ever find it's hard or it's a chore, then the thing to know is you're not in your sweet spot. You know, that's a really good sign. So, you know, when it's easy, it should be, if you're dealing with something you know and not confident in, and if you're able to write language, which I've always been able to do, then the whole thing should be pleasurable and an easy process. And I found it was. So I kind of knew from the outset that I was in the right space. Now this is very good. Well, it's not in tune, but it's actually playing really well. So I might only need to do some polishing. Do you know what? I'm impressed with that. Mightily so. Verily mightily so. That is playing without needing levelling. God, these tools are a far long way away. Yeah, I'm very impressed. So we're on about 1.2 there. Well low. Amazing. Amazing. Oh, good for you. So I can honestly say this is one that's playing out of the box really well. Although it's a different neck than it was originally intended for. That's actually very good. Yeah, it's a little bit challenged on those lower strings. I mean, that's very low action. It's barely 1.5 millimeters, but that is my target action. And a flat radius guitar like this should play. So I'm going to level it because I need to polish the strings, frets anyway, and it's going to be the best it can be. So let's just get on with that bit. Yes, so anyway, so back to the ebook tale. So I found the writing the second time round, the writing and the designing, as long as I just kept it simple, kept the design simple and consistent, and I didn't have too much trouble doing that. The iBooks software, iBooks author software happened to be really good for that. I couldn't fault it. If it hadn't been for that software, I wouldn't have done it, because everything else was just too unintuitive, crappy software. But the iBooks author, you know, if it's still around, I hope it's still around to do this next one, because if it isn't, I'm going to struggle learning something else. Anyway, so I wrote it, did it all, and then produced it in, I think, December 2016, and kind of got it out and released it as a PDF. And there was some interesting, you know, conversations, because I talked about it on YouTube a couple of times, and a few worldwide YouTube people had a view on the price I put on it. Because, you know, you've got to think to yourself, how do I price this thing? It's you know, on the one hand, it's not bricks and mortar, you know, or what do they call it? Atoms and molecules. It's digital, right? So how do you charge for that? How do you give it a value? And I have to say that I thought you really have to look at the prices that people sell ebooks for, and then you think to yourself, you can see that it can range the vast majority of ebooks, because they aren't solid material things, people kind of think, well, you know, books are books and everyone else's book is charged at their cost this much, and therefore I should make mine cost this much. And actually, I didn't come at it that way. I thought of it differently. I thought, I'm so confident in the way I'm doing it, this thing here, I'm going to look at it from the point of view of how much would this save you above and, you know, what you would pay to have somebody else do it for you, and possibly not even do it very well and still take your money. Because having, you know, by that time in doing this work, I met so many people who had paid their fairly hard-earned money for a setup which afterwards they couldn't tell the difference, or in some cases was actually worse than when they'd taken the guitar in. And that seemed to me, you know, to be just a terrible state of affairs. So I was confident that doing this I'm confident in the change that I can make to anyone's guitar. So I thought, that what's that worth to save you from worrying about taking it to somebody who may take your money and actually give you something back, a good chance of giving you something back that's even the same as it was. And the reason it's the same as it was is that I had learned by that time is that most techs and guitar setup people, that particularly the sort of younger, less experienced ones trying to get into the business, if you like, they would charge little, you know, sort of 30 quid or 25 quid for setup. Now in that sort of money, what they never did was this, level the frets, and they certainly didn't do it this kind of way, but they didn't do it at all for that money. And so they were limited, as the owner of the guitar was, by the state of the frets underneath. So that the lowest action, which the owner had pretty much always already set, they couldn't get any lower on it, because to take it any lower would just result in buzz. And sometimes when they did lower it, because they didn't do fret leveling, because they either didn't know how or they weren't pricing it to do that within their budget setup, they would then, you know, the customer would say, I want it lower, and they'd drop the action lower, like the customer said, and give them back a guitar that buzzed and choked even worse. Because there's just no beating the system. The only way you're going to get lower action over a set of more or less uneven frets, which pretty much every guitar has, is to level them out to fit the action you've chosen, and that's what I do here. So it was kind of clear that where am I going with this story? You know, I was confident that my method, or the system I used, if you followed it, a little bit more at the top end there. I was confident that if you followed it, it would save you from the worry that you know, taking your guitar to a lot of price competing guitar techs, you know, taking it to one of them and getting it back either as bad or the same, or if not worse than when you took it in. I thought, you know, to save somebody from that was a pretty big outcome, and then to save the money they may often wasted, but then to have the skill to do it on all their other guitars, because who knows a guitarist with just one guitar. Good. I figured that actually had a real worth, you know, and I pegged it at 25 quid for the ebook, and I wanted it to be something that actually only people who'd seen me do things this way, I wanted them to be the customers, because they would see this and go, oh, he's going to tell me how to do that. I've seen him do it on YouTube. I can see why it works. I totally get it. I can hear the improvements as he's doing it. You know, gone from choking notes to no choking notes. You know, so they're convinced that that's a method they really are interested in using. And so it saves them, not only saves them the price of setups, lesser setups you could argue, but it also gives them the skill and the confidence to do that themselves for their other guitars, and actually for a lot of people for other people's guitars. And so they become, you know, they end up doing it for friends who are amazed by how well their guitars play and how well they stay in tune, and so on and so on. Not bad. So it was that confidence about what what it really delivered, I hate using that word, it's like a modern speak, but I was confident about the value it delivered, and I just thought, it's not $1.99 because it's not a book and it's not made of paper, therefore why should I pay for it? I thought, I'll probably save you several hundreds of quid over time, and possibly make you money when you do it for other people and stuff. So I thought that was worth at least the money you'd pay for the cheapest tech you could find, at least the 25 quid. In fact, looking back on it now, because my market knows what I'm offering and knows why the book's valuable to them, I could have charged more. And, my business coach argues I should have. But I was happy with my decision. I had to choose a price point and stick with it. Otherwise you just go around in circles. And the problem is you can't take the advice of most well-meaning friends on YouTube, eBay, Facebook, whatever. Everyone's got a strategy they would do with it, and it's quite valid for them. But it's one of those things that if it doesn't, it won't necessarily feel valid. There's no single business answer. So I got people on Facebook, YouTube, telling me, "You idiot, $24.99. You've just ruined your chances. This could have paid off your mortgage and made you, you could have retired on this if you'd only charged it at $1.99 or $2.99 or whatever their version of the correct price was." And when you've made the decision, and a bit of you thinks, God, were they right? Was it the right thing to do? Was I just being arrogant and stupid? And actually, you know what? It was the right decision. It was certainly the right decision for me. And it was the right decision because not only have I been able to sell the ebook, I've sold, I literally don't know how many thousands now, but I've sold several thousand. Probably as many direct as I have through Amazon and Apple, and obviously Amazon and Apple keep a big chunk of the cover price, so I don't make that much money, but at the same time they sort of open it up to a much more global audience through their stores than I have access to on my own, which is okay. I forgot to tell you the way I got it into the Amazon one is I paid one of those Indian offshore Indian tech workers, digital tech workers, to convert it from the PDF into a Kindle ready. And it cost me a couple of hundred quid, but actually even that was worth it because it's paid itself back via Amazon or Kindle sales. Anyway, so the point was I think I got the strategy right as far as I can see, and certainly it was right for me. And what's true about the ebook now, there's some really low frets here. It's cutting most of them, but there's a patch here, cluster there that are low, which may make, no, it's okay, they play. Sometimes those low frets can make the next ones choke out, but that's okay, it works. Right, I'm done. So there's a fair little bit of leveling there to do. It played okay, sort of okay without it, except for the bass side, which was a bit crap. So I've made a load of dust. I've made some filthy fingers, which I'm going to, don't know what that was, which I'm going to wash off now. But first of all, I'll take the strings off, and just get rid of the dust on this neck, and then be ready to basically mask it off and polish it out. And we'll set the tremolo up floating as well. It's one of those things I want people to kind of see that even a 70 quid original 70 quid guitar can be made to play with a floating tremolo and staying in tune. Now my claim for it staying in tune isn't going to be quite as bold on this guitar as others, because most often now I use Tusk for the nut, but at the prices that this is going to achieve for me, which isn't much. I can't really, I don't want to put a tusk nut on. It's at least 10 quid a time, and it's a little bit beyond you know, the value of this. So I'm going to use a cloth, a damp cloth, just to get rid of this dust first, and then I will wash this cloth off in my bucket of warm water that I prepare for myself every day when I arrive at the workshop, because that gives me plenty of some warm water to wash my hands in, which is something I couldn't do in the shed. And there were times when I would end up with much grubbier hands than I would like in handling people's guitars. So the ability now to just make sure I've got this warm water, and it sort of stays warm mostly throughout the session, and it just means I can get my hands clean, and then when I'm handling the new strings and stuff, I don't feel like I'm putting extra grime on things. Now, if I'm being sensible, I should take a moment to straighten out these strings. And I think that's what I'll do. And what I'm going to do is I'll take these strings out, stash them for sacrificial purposes another time, and then I will, off camera, I think I'm going to put the radio on. Off camera, I'm going to crown these frets. In fact, I'll do that now so you can see it, and then I'll just go into masking off the neck mode, and oops, that's good. I'll do that off camera and do the fret polishing off camera, and come back when it's time to restring it and set the tremolo to float, and we'll have a very nice playing budget guitar with the same pickups that it came with, nothing fancy going on there. Interestingly, these are unbranded. That's interesting. I thought they had Roswell branded on them. Maybe this is just from a crossover time. I don't know. I thought they had Roswell in these standard series, but maybe it was just at the time where they didn't. The medium, these are quite low profile frets, so I'm just going to use the medium side of this thingy. Interestingly, I'm seeing some very, very slight evidence of what looks like play wear, so I don't know whether this was a demo model or something. Give me that brush. I don't know. You just see a little dimple here and there where the strings appear to have pressed down. That's just maybe my imagination, because it certainly was new out of the box and I haven't played it. So maybe I'm imagining it. Anyway, so you can see there's hardly any work to do in crowning these frets, so very little has actually been levelled in this process. A little bit more at the top here, and you can see now I'm going to spend a little bit more time the crowning process up here. Anyway, so that was the story of the 5 steps to guitar setup heaven. And going back to the idea of, from a business perspective, it's without doubt my most successful product. Now, you know, there's lots of different ways you can measure success, but one of the ways that we have to take into account is that a product can be probably judged as successful if it carries on making you money long past the point where you've put the initial time investment into it. So, and the ebook does that, you know, every few days now. It's not a huge demand at the moment, but it goes in phases. And some months I'll sell 10 or so direct. Other months I might sell 3 or 4. There's a sort of regular flow through from Amazon and Kindle, but it's not a huge amount. But it's nice to have. So it's even if it's not a ton of money, you know, when that thing goes ka-ching, you have money, and somebody buys direct, and I'm able to go into my WeTransfer.com subscriber pro version of that, and I've got my files all stored there, and I serve them out with no limits to how many I can serve out to people. Then I've got 25 quid before tax gone into the PayPal department, and then that turns into money I can use. So it's very, very satisfying, even if it's not a huge volume, to have that. So profitability wise, it's the most profitable thing. I get money from it, and the investment in it is long gone on the horizon. So that's a and the opportunity cost, I suppose they call it, of selling, or the cost of sale, is non-existent. I don't have to do any more. Oh, that's not true. I have to rent €12 a month for the WeTransfer.com. So it's a great thing to have. And then as soon as you have something like that in your stable, you kind of think, oh, this is now if I had 3 or 4 of these and done as well as this one, maybe as popular, or if not more successful for whatever reason, this wouldn't be bad at all. This could pay the rent. And having something that you did 4 years ago now, helping to pay the rent. I'm not saying that one ebook pays the rent right now, but having a couple of things where you did the work ages back, paying the rent is a very good feeling. And so from a business point of view, it makes sense to make more digital content like the ebook, but obviously only if there's good content to be made. There's a reason to make it. So I think the biggest danger would be to start trying to shove out crap just because it's so seductive and attractive to have this passive income thing. I'll make a book about every aspect of this, or I'll do the Reloved guitars and that. I think, well, I don't know for anyone else, but I certainly know for me that every book that I will make in my time has to have that holy grail thing that the first one had, which is that I know exactly what I'm doing. I know why it's different from what other people are doing. I know why my market will recognize that difference and pay for it. So every book I do has to fit that same, or meet the same essential test inside here. And up till now, I've been thinking about a second book for a long time, and it hasn't crystallized until just recently. And I kind of now have got to that spot where I know I can make the second one. And it's changed. It's very different. I thought about it. I kind of planned it out in my head 6 months ago even. And what I've arrived at now is going to be very different even from that, which is great. It's how it works when I'm, I think it's how it should work. You kind of wait until you know you're in the right spot, if that doesn't sound too sort of new age wispy. Right, I don't like the way that these strings have stuck in this thing, in the bridge here. It's not the best in the world. In fact, it's crap. Oh, that's a bit of hard work. Not so good, Harley Benton. Shouldn't have to fight this hard to get strings out. That's just a cautionary note. I'm going to get the G out. Anyway, so so now I'm at that stage where I think it's time to do the second one. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I think the next couple of months is the period of time to do it, while we're in the Christmas period and the countries were in some sort of lockdown-y situation still. Anyway, but just that was just a sort of a background talk through while I was doing this, just about, if you're ever thinking of doing online or something like an ebook, sellable online content, it's not the right way for everybody, but that's how it worked for me. And I've done it once, and I'm content with how it's worked for me, but it's absolutely, who's to say I couldn't have done it the way somebody else suggested and made an absolute ton more money and retired, whatever. I don't know. I mean, it could have been, but you can never know. You can only commit to the way you think it's going to work for you and get stuck in and get on with it. And I think that for me was the most important bit. I found myself in danger of just constantly trying to find somebody who knew how to do it better than me and pay them and leave control of it to them, which was not the right idea. And then I spent all that time trying to worry about formats and stuff. And eventually, the best bit was just deciding to do it myself and do it in a piece of software that I found I could work with and allowed me to have the creative control. And that then just meant I could get on with writing the content and filming the stuff I needed to film to make it work. So I think you know, if you're going to make content, it helps if you have a basic ability with, you know, writing the content, with taking the pictures, with taking the video, and in my case with structuring the document that you're going to produce, because handing it over can be, actually, to get it done properly, is going to be a very expensive thing to do. Now if you can predict accurately the amount of sales you're going to make and stuff, then it still you know, businesses are only kind of tradings with money, deals with money. It's, if you can make more than it costs you to have somebody professionally produce it, then of course it's still worth getting someone to professionally produce it, because you'll make money. I'll just put this over here a minute. In my case, I didn't have any guarantee that I would make enough to cover having somebody professionally produce it, but also I've got too much experience of the headache that comes with handing over creative control to somebody else. You know, everybody has experience of knowing or knows people who've had websites, handed over a website to be made by someone else, and then it's just become not only a nightmare project that hasn't been realised, it's either gone badly or the relationships have gone sour, and the communication then gets very painful and bitter, and sometimes it can go from not only not being a good experience but to being something of a nightmare one. I've met so many people who just about everyone recounts a sort of nightmare web design story where they just couldn't get on or make the web designer do what they wanted or see what they needed or whatever, and it became horrible. How many more of these do I need? 1, 2, 3, 4. Probably need more. So it helped for me to find a piece of software that I was confident I could use myself, which then opened up the control of the thing by myself, and that made the whole process much more enjoyable. Once I was confident I could produce the book, I stopped worrying about all of that stuff and just got on with enjoying the content creating part. You know, just getting down and demonstrating stuff I knew and was confident in, that I knew people would find valuable. So that was the freeing bit, to let go of, to not have to worry about, you know, the relationship of trying to get somebody to design your things for you and pay them money and manage that difficult creative challenge. Anyway, so it's been a good outcome for me. Like I say, it is very, very seductive when you've realised, when you first experience money coming in long after you've produced the thing and done the so-called hard work. It's a fantastic feeling, and you really do find yourself wanting more. And I think it's been, in a way, for me, it's been an act of restraint, to not dash in and try and just knock out another one, because it just, you know, the idea of getting that ka-ching cash register noise going off every 5 minutes, you know, becomes very, very seductive. But I think it could be very easy to start producing stuff that your heart isn't in, or that you don't have the same confidence in. And I just, for me, that was the magical holy grail for me is to reach the point where I am confident in what I'm doing, for whom and why, and therefore why it's worth something to those people. And I kind of I told myself that I wasn't going to do it until I'd reached that point. Anyway, I'm going to stop this now. I'm going to get this all polished up and masked off, and I'll see you at the other end when it's done. Hey, let's come back to this. It's the next day, it's dark. I've been doing some things here. Let me show you, you can probably see, but switching to the whiteboard cam, we've got finally, ta-da, the bandsaw. Yes, it's a cheap Aldi bandsaw, but you know what? It's incredibly handy for cutting out little bits that you need, right? We've got the thingy, I mean, Old Faithful up in the corner there. Really, really vital piece of kit. This Dremel bench, yeah, soldering bench, all good. And I've got my templates in there now, starting to fill that up. And, oh yeah, this could be, well, this is my router table, and I could do a lot more things with it than I've ever done. So I could do edging, jointing of bits of wood, which I'm going to probably need to do at some point. And in here, well, two things really. I got a couple of different curtains. I had shower curtains I had kicking around, so I bought another one of these things, which was too short for the main thing in there, but it was perfect for this one. So that's one thing. And then I've got a pretty much full-length thing. So I'm kind of leaning now towards continuing to work in here. Obviously I need to tighten this up a little bit, raise it, but I think this is going to be my shower, my spraying place to keep most of the dust off all the stores and things in here. So I have a feeling I'm going to get to stay in here and probably use my new machine, which I've brought in finally in that space. So obviously all of this is yet to be filed away, and there's work waiting to be done and stuff, which is great. I like to have things on the go, but we're just finishing off. Look, we can even close that off now. How cool is that? I'm just working to finish off this, and what I did since I last saw you was I replaced the nut with a tusk nut, because I just think for adding a tenner or so to the price for a replacement, or you know, for a tusk nut, that's at cost to me from wherever I get them from, online, you know, eBay type of thing. You know, for that extra tenner on the price, it just makes sense. It's going to give this thing the ultimate tuning stability, which is what, you know, what I'm going to basically add. I'm adding to this guitar that it wouldn't have had before with its standard nut, and which I'm going to give it now. So I just thought, I started off with a bone nut. So off camera just now as I came in, and I did a few things here, I just replaced the nut, and we're going to go with tusk. There was a tall right-handed tusk nut, which I have reversed basically, which is fine because it's tall enough. I can just seat it in there and cut down with my files to get to the right height, and then I've shaved off any excess. So it's kind of just, it'll need a little tweaking once I put the strings in, but it's sort of the last thing. But like I said, much better than going with the bone one. You know, I want this budget price guitar to play beautifully, and I want the tremolo to play surprisingely well. You know, I want it to stand out how well it plays on the tremolo. So for that, I've learned over time, you really do need a tusk nut. Anyway, it's a Sunday evening. The site is pretty quiet, I think, and I'm just putting in a couple of hours before going, probably via my parents' place in Tavistock, say a quick hello. They're still shielding very much so I don't get to kind of go in and chat or anything really. We'll just stand in the doorway. Yeah, just see them. You know, they're vulnerable age, and I know they're not keen on taking a risk. And from their perspective, you know, there'll be a vaccine coming along very shortly, and for them it means they can have the peace of mind of having a vaccine, and then being able to see the rest of the family again. And to be honest, they don't have any, I don't think they have any particular concerns about it either way. And I know for a fact that they don't buy into any of the weirder stuff about what certain software moguls using it do or aren't doing with their money. I don't. It sounds a bit crazy to me, but I don't want to get drawn into a long discussion about that because I don't want to demonetize my videos for no good reason. I will do if there's a good reason, but I've been through all of my catalogue of videos now, all 750, one by one, and removed all of the mid-roll adverts and all of the unskippable ads that YouTube defaulted or put on by default. So it should have all gone back to watchable, reasonably watchable, without that endless interruption. The weird thing is at the moment my ad revenue is going up slightly, and I completely fully expected it to go down. It does a sort of rolling revenue thing, so it tells you basically 30 days back from today, this is what you've earned. And it moves, it updates with every new day. So technically, by shutting all the mid-rolls and unskippables off, I should have seen an immediate downturn in revenue. But I'm pleased to say I haven't. In fact, it's going up slightly. I mean, it's not astronomical. I've said before, I said on this earlier on, I think, that at the moment I'm averaging about $200 a month from revenue, from YouTube revenue, and that's absolutely great for me. I mean, I'm not aiming for it, and I'm not making videos for it. I'm not aiming to get lots of mass viewership and whatever. It'd be nice when video is popular, but one of the things I decided a long time ago was to absolutely not chase ad revenue, and certainly not to become dependent on it, because I'm not saying it's a wrong thing to do. It's for some people it's a very valid way to build a business model. For me, it doesn't work because it would immediately turn me into a content producer, which I am first and foremost not. I'm a guitar tech, if anything, who happens to produce some content for a particular market, and I don't want it to appeal to everyone, and I'm not trying to get hits by making provoking arguments, getting into fights with people about Gibsons or Tonewoods, or all that kind of stuff that makes for a really good argument. It makes for great viewing figures, which of course, providing it's contentious but not political, Google and the advertisers love it. If it's a sort of nerd's paradise of discussion or polemic, polarized argument, then the advertisers love it because it can be seen to be a clean, safe subject, but one that attracts millions of viewers, so they get a great hit for their bang for their advertising buck, and the content creator in turn gets something back. But like I said, I've never gone after that because I just didn't want to be tied to the thing of looking out for, trying to, I suppose, people call it clickbait and stuff. It's too easy to get into that. And the other thing too is it's far too easy to get hooked into, fall into a trap of ego, where you start really caring too much about whether people like you or don't like you. And it's hard enough to resist that anyway when you do something like what I'm doing here, because you can always, what I mean is you're always tempted to get hooked into feeling bad if somebody slags you off or whatever. So it's hard, it's a challenge anyway to stay out of that, but it's doubly, triply hard if if you're kind of tied up, you've got money, your income tied up with it. So it's really seductive, and it kind of pulls you into getting your ego hooked in. So I don't need that at this age. and I'm not likely to, but I don't want to anyway. I don't want to go anywhere into that sort of mould. And you know, I don't need to be, never wanted to be, never needed to be the most popular channel of this, that, or the other. I always set out to just do what I was doing and do it well, you know, do it differently. But you know, anyway. So from that perspective, the revenue from Google and YouTube, if you like, has always been secondary, and I treat it as a helpful bonus along the way. I am hugely concerned about the way these kinds of platforms are going, in terms of their impact on freedom of discussion of important ideas, and you know, challenging ideas. I think it's been stamped out, which is very worrying in a wider perspective. But you know, I'm sort of, that's a bigger picture than what I'm doing. That's a general take on multimedia, or you know, digital media in the first place. As far as I'm concerned, I have a very particular usage for it, which you could say plays into this, you know, the problem, as part of the problem, but it's not of my making, and there's not a lot I can do about it single-handedly. So I live in a situation where I continue to have those reservations about how this medium is changing ideas of what can be talked about and what can't be, and I carry on using it, you know, knowing that or feeling that as well. So it's just how it is. I suppose I'd like it to be different, but you know, while it remains a money-making platform, it never was and never is going to be about. It wasn't set up altruistically as a kind of forum for free speech, and it's always been about the platform owner creating an environment they can make the most capital from, or most profit from. So, you know, I'm realistic about that. Some people, you find, you know, they talk about these platforms as if they were set up as some sort of public service, some altruistic public service, you know, and that they express horror that they've turned into something else, you know, and that they should be returned immediately to being, I don't know, some altruistic platform for the good of humanity. And it never was that, you know. Google never was that. YouTube, as a result, never was that. Nor is anything else that's online. You know, nor was Facebook. It was never there for us, to provide us with a service. You know, it was there first and foremost to achieve Mark Zuckerberg's kind of aims, and a lot of them seemed like started out pretty egotistically based as well, liking and being liked by chicks or something. But anyhow, so you know, I'm not in any illusion about the purpose of these things, nor where they're going. You know, I think one of the biggest reasons, one of the main reasons why I never wanted to become dependent in any way on this platform is it's obvious from the beginning that one day, Google stroke YouTube was going to come along, and cost. You know, it's going to charge me for the thrill of storing 700 3-hour videos. By the way, there's a pickguard sheet on here. Whoever buys this, you need to take it off. Yeah, so you know, Google's never going to give this away for free. And just like things like if you're doing business all the time on eBay, people who do business all the time on eBay have learned the hard way. A lot of them have learned the hard way that eBay sometimes will kill your account for its own reasons. Maybe it thinks you've done some activity that looks dubious to it, I think I'm going to put 10s on here for this purposes of this sale. Yeah, so when you use eBay, for example, and PayPal, as soon as it thinks there's something dubious, it shuts down your account and holds your money. And sometimes it shuts it down. I've heard from people who they've had their account shut down altogether, and they never get their money, or it takes them years, by which time their business is sunk without a trace. So I've never wanted to be in that position, and I have to say it's one of the reasons why when I get, if ever I'm lucky enough to build up some cash money, some reserve in PayPal. Maybe I've sold a couple of guitars or done a run of setups or refurbs. I almost always transfer the money out to my bank, because I just do not want to have eBay or PayPal doing a dirty on me because they don't like something that I've done, or don't like my face today or whatever. I've heard too many stories of people having these situations where it goes, sorry, you've got to prove, we don't trust you, it's fraudulent or suspicious activity, now please provide proof of your identity 25 times over. And people spend weeks trying to talk to them, which they never can, and then they spend weeks more providing endless copies of documentation you would never send to faceless people, like passports, driving licenses, scans, photocopies. It's like, are you crazy? But you have to do it because they've got all your money and they're going to get access to your account. And if for people whose business depend on it, that's make or break, isn't it? So I've always said, if you use these things, use them with kind of caution, and so that you're not 100% dependent on them, or you can afford to lose whatever you've got currently in your account. And it makes for it's a couple of times it makes for a really, really frustrating situation. So for example, one of them is PayPal has this weird thing that if you connect it to your bank and you choose to buy something but you have no PayPal in there, it will instantly do the deal because it wants the commission, right? And it will do the deal instantly, and it will take the money from your bank, and your bank is set up to allow that to happen. You've given it sort of direct, immediate, direct debity type thing, access to it. However, if then, like me, you buy something and you get paid for it, and then you take the money out because you don't want to leave more than 50 quid or something kicking around in your PayPal, occasionally you'll have somebody who wants a refund. And in that situation, I've made the mistake in the past of going, well, it's in my bank account, I'll just hit the refund button, blah, blah, blah. But what happens is, on the refund aspect, unlike when you're buying, if you're trying to give back money to somebody, but you have no money in your PayPal, it will not take it from your bank like it does when you're buying. It will does what it calls, apply for some sort of, not charge back, but it takes a week or something to query your bank and to set up a transfer and something or other. I don't think there's a technical good reason for it. I think it likes to just hold on to money. But anyway, it takes about a week. And for somebody who's just bought a guitar and then decided, for whatever reason, could they get a refund? And you go, yeah, all right then. Which is, hard enough. I said, it's a bit of annoying enough situation to be in. But to then accidentally hit the refund button without remembering that PayPal does this stupid thing, you find them not getting refunded, and then they have to wait a week until PayPal does its thing with your bank and finally transfers the money. And your customer often gets really shirty about it. Not surprisingly, they don't know the workings. I think it has only happened a couple of times, but one time somebody kind of criticised me for not having enough money in my bank account to do a refund. In my PayPal to do a refund, and I had to write them back and say, "Now, dear fellow, not your business. However, it just so happens this is how I use my accounts. I'm entitled to do it this way, and it's not up to you to to critique where I keep my money." Anyway, and it was annoying because it wasn't something I was aware of was going to happen to me, and I had to then sort of take the wrap off the customer and so on. And I did it a second time, idiotically, a couple of years later for a small amount, relatively small amount, but it still tied up this money for a week or so before this guy, and this guy was just pestering me left, right and centre. So it's things like that that I really can't be arsed with. So I would say if you're going to do PayPal and eBay, you know, do whatever you have to do to retain control of your money as much as possible, and absolutely don't leave chunks of cash or chunks of money sitting around in PayPal for them to decide to shut your account down or close you down without explanation, because their algorithm thinks you fit the profile of a South American drug dealer or something, and today's the day they have to prove to the CIA's pen pushers that they have X, Y, and Z procedures in place. That's what they do. And it's the same with eBay. You know, when they do this, you know, it's, again, reasons not to be dependent on places like that is I found out the hard way a little while back, whether it was some competitor of mine being shitty or not, somebody apparently went to eBay and complained that in selling one of my guitars, or maybe it was even a Strat copy by, I don't know, Encore or something. I just wrote, you know, Encore, Stratocaster, Indian made, whatever, you know, X amount. And somebody with a grudge, possibly, went and filed a complaint with eBay saying, copyright, he's using the name Stratocaster and he's not allowed to because it's not Fender. And so they sent me this absolutely shitty threatening letter saying it's a misuse of copyright, and if you use it again, if you refer to a guitar that way again, we'll shut your account. You'll shut down your profile. And I wrote back and said, so you mean every normal usage that everybody in the entire guitaring world who has ever referred to a guitar of that shape as a Les Paul copy or a Les Paul style or a Stratocaster style, you're telling me that I can't actually use those words anymore, even though I'm clearly pointing out that it's a brand, you know, different brand copy, and it's in homage to. And they said, no, you're not allowed to use it because the name belongs to Fender and the name belongs to Gibson. And so in that situation, well, everyone else who hadn't been looked at that day by eBay, or hadn't been dobbed in, if you like, everyone else carried on using the phrase, the terms Strat, copy, and so on, or Stratocaster even. I wasn't allowed to from that point onwards, and they kind of set their algorithms. They threatened to keep track of me, and if I used those terms, they would shut me without question. So that basically meant I couldn't thereafter. It was just too much risk for my account to use any of those terms, and they got what they, well, the thing is, to say they got what they wanted isn't true. They didn't give a damn. What they cared about was ticking some corporate boxes to show some big brand companies, lawyers, that they take action. Look, we've told 7 people this month, whatever. So I fell foul of that. But what it's meant, in practical terms, it's meant that ever since then I've never again been able to list my guitars as a Strat style or a Strat copy or whatever. Which means if I've made a Strat style copy, I am unable to be found in searches on eBay for that. So, I mean, I've told this story before, but the point is, it's long lasting, it's debilitating if you're depending on selling, if you're flipping guitars, you know, and you're a regular buyer or seller, and it's just absolutely hopeless because they don't even care. It's not even practical or realistic. They're just doing it to tick some kind of corporate lawyer boxes. So it's an absolute bummer, to be quite honest. But that's why I continue to say, whatever you do, don't get over dependent on things like eBay and PayPal, because you'll get caught out without control over what you can do, and then, like in that sort of situation, you'll find they can have a very, very real wrong thing. They can have a very real and important negative consequence on your business, and I hate the idea of giving them that much control. It drives me nuts to think of them shutting me down because of their stupidity. The radio is shrieking quietly in the background, which sounds really weird, making me think there's someone here. Yeah, so that's my age-old advice. Don't, unless you have a clever strategy to cover yourself, be very careful not to get, don't put yourself at the mercy of these companies who are, to all intents and purposes, unaccountable. And people, sadly, only tend to find that out when it's too late. From the outside, things like PayPal and eBay, they look like great companies and whatever because everyone uses them, right? Until it goes wrong for you, and then you realise they've messed your life up completely, but you can't even speak to anyone ever, and they won't answer you, and they won't follow what you would think of as a kind of commercial logic. They just do whatever they have decided they're going to do. I've seen too many people go hair turn grey too early with a problem of that kind. So my advice to you, if you're running your guitar business, is if you ever find yourself, keep reality checking, sense checking. If you find yourself being dependent on these things, reorganize, change the way you're set up and what you're doing. Just don't ever get caught and stuck in that sort of position. Anyway, so that's just some of the things I've learned over the years. I kind of knew them before, so I never really got caught out in that way. I was always pretty, suspicious of things like PayPal from the outset. I'd already seen a few things that they'd done which seemed just unbelievably pirate-like. Well, actually, unaccountable. That's the main criticism I'd have. Is they can do what they want, and you've got pretty much no recourse to anything. Who knows? That might change over time, but certainly wasn't like that. Hasn't been like that yet. Anyhow, but I think it's important to think of it that way, because sometimes if you're working away and you're having a great time doing your business and doing what you love, then it's a bit all too easy to take your eye off the ball, especially if you're making money, and it's going well. Last thing you kind of want to do is stop and think, oh God, is this the right strategy? But I would always say, look at, I suppose in financial speak, wouldn't they? They'd say, watch out for your exposure to, and the exposure to would be to whatever these companies are able to do without recourse to any financial, controller, ombudsman-y type thing, regulator, I think is probably a better word. So yeah, I would absolutely advise constantly sense check your exposure to their unaccountability, because I hate it when I see people who are caught out of the blue. Everything's going great, they're doing really well, the basics of what they're doing is good, and then for some reason Facebook even Facebook, yeah, somebody I don't know, dobs them in for hate speech on Facebook because they said something innocent-ish, or you're dubbed in for eBay or PayPal thinks you've sold too many things in one go, so you must be a scammer or something. We've moved too much money around, whatever. But to lose your entire business because either their algorithms or at best their little bods somewhere in offshore have decided that your credit's not good or your business isn't good. That's an absolute killer to be hit like that. So So that's why I've always been very wary. And I started out, when I started doing this, I decided very early on that not only wasn't I going to make my business heavily dependent on digital online stuff, I was also was very clear about the kind of limits of how much of the business I was going to make dependent on buying and selling guitars. You know, because there's a much higher risk factor involved in buying and setting up and selling on compared to doing customer setups. And I learned pretty quickly that when it comes to setting up and selling, you don't really have any control over the kind of expectations a customer has. And it's not to insult the customer. It's just a statement of fact. You don't know what a customer is expecting. You know, it's not saying they're right or wrong. You just don't know. You think you know, and you do your best to do what you think is going to represent value. But the problem is it can be that a customer gets a guitar, and whether you like it or not, and regardless of how much work you put into it and effort and goodwill and so on, it could just be that it doesn't meet the customer's expectations. And in which case you find yourself, if you want to keep a good reputation and to keep your business relationships good, you tend to, if you're like me, you tend to refund people rather than argue. Well, I'm technically not obliged to. You know, it says quite clearly here this, that, and the other. I never like to go down that line, so I'm much more likely to refund in order to end up with a customer who has been put out as little as possible. And I don't want to punish them for their expectations being different from mine. I just accept that is occasionally the way it is. And you know, the idea is to resolve that as amicably as possible, and that usually means losing out in the deal. So I, you know, that inability to know and to be exact about, or to be certain about the customer's expectations is one of the reasons why you could say there's maybe, I don't know, let's call it a 10% duffer rate, you know, in setting up and selling guitars, you know, for every, or maybe 0.5%, so in every, 1%, 1 in 100 will go that way. Actually, no, maybe it's not 1%, sorry, it's higher than that, it's about 10 to 15%, so 1 out of 10, 1.5 out of 10, 2 out of 20, something like that. The customer won't be satisfied and will want a refund, and you know, to keep things happy, you tend to, like me, you want to give it, but that's expensive because you get the guitar back and you'll be able to sell it again to somebody else, blah blah blah, but you've lost the postage, or you've lost the time, you've lost all the stress and hassle of advertising it, you've got to do all that again, and you know, it just becomes unprofitable when that happens. So rather than sort of moan that was a sort of likely percentage of duffers, which I think my experience just showed me that was approximately what it was, I just dealt with it by limiting the chances for that to happen. And the way to do that is to keep to a minimum, or a known minimum, the amount of the percentage volume of business that's set up and sell on. So I decided very early that it wasn't going to be more than, you know, a small percentage of what I did, and as a result of that, I've never been upset about the small percentage that I've had those issues with. Of course I'd rather not have them, but I've not been adversely kind of knocked by it, nor have I suffered too much financial kind of hit as a result of it. I just accept it's going to happen. I build it into my costing and my expectations. I hope it doesn't happen, but I'm realistic, and I know it realistically will. But yeah, right from get go, I just thought I'm not doing more than 10-20% of my business ever is going to be that sort of activity, and so made the bulk of it setting up and upgrading and refurbing, that kind of stuff. And the reason why is because that stuff has a very, very small, by comparison, a much smaller dissatisfaction level. And the reason for that is kind of quite simple in some ways, is I know what I'm doing when I'm doing setups and refurbs and upgrades and stuff, but more importantly, it works because the customer knows what their guitar was like beforehand, and then they obviously also know what it's like when they get it back, and as a result, sit down in the slot properly. As a result, somebody who sends you their guitar for a setup, when they get it back, if you've done your job right, then they'll know straight away that it's improved. And again, only once in a very long while, that doesn't happen. Maybe something changes in transit, or it's not quite what they wanted. And sometimes it's I'm a victim of my own ambition, in that I'll go too low, and the change in central heating temperature in their house compared to here causes the strings to sit lower and choke out or whatever, and I pay for it in it not being quite as good as it should be. Okie dokie. Let me just tap this a tiny bit. But it's a much better percentage, because it's much better that somebody can feel their guitar, and when it comes back, feel the difference. Feel the difference. Okay, that's good. That's good. A little bit off the edge of there. Yeah, so that's kind of the logic behind why I ended up, or how I ended up just controlling that risk, mitigating and controlling it. And even though buying, setting up and selling on sometimes is very attractive, it's nice because I like to buy guitars, who doesn't, and I like to see new ones, and I like the thought of, I can do this up and sell it on. The truth of the matter is that as soon as you think about the risk that it brings, it suddenly doesn't make good sense to do it. It's me being self-indulgent, actually, more than anything. So I've learned to be disciplined and not go that way. Okay, tusk nut in place, lovely jubbly, new strings on, excess above the slots removed. Now we can tighten it, tune up and stretch. And then we'll intonate, and then we will intonate and wow, it's very low. That's very low because that tapped down just a fraction more lower than it was when I did cut the slots, but that's okay. It works. Right, let's get a tuning fork. Let's turn this heater off now. I think we're warm enough in here. So, we'll do the stretching part first, and then we'll do the intonation. Sorry, the intonation, and then we'll do the floating. No, actually, you know what? I'm not going to float the tremolo on this one at the moment because somebody inquired about it yesterday. Possibly a customer would buy it for their son who's a learner. And actually, whilst I wanted the low action for the learner and I wanted the tuning stability, what I don't think the learner needs is a floating tremolo. And only because it makes it complicated if they want to set it flat again and not use the floating aspect, because it changes the action. Whereas setting it as a down only tremolo doesn't affect the action. I can set the action here and they can play it when I get it home. So and if somebody else wants it, not that person, for their beginner son, then I will set the tremolo to float if they want it. But it's you know, we can do that. That's the thing, and especially with this tusk nut, that gives us the tuning stability to use the tremolo, even with the slots cut with the thing that I cut them with, whatever that's called, file. It's still going to keep tuned very well. Get on the notch, thank you. Get on the notch, thank you. How about that? Check the time. Time is 19:03. Okay, it's good. I'm just noticing as well on here the tremolo, what they call those things? Tremolo screws are not set correctly. So I'm just going to make a small adjustment. They're too far down. Where is the correct screwdriver? Will I put it up here? No. I'll put it there? No. I'll put it there? Possibly. Where is it? I've got this one. So, what we don't want is the tremolo squashed right down at the front. We need it backed off a little bit to give it room to move if it needs to move. They're okay, that's okay. But the end ones are just a bit much. Right. So again, I'll just do a little bit more stretchering. Okay, so this is the kind of hybrid Harley Benton, set with a very low light action, fret leveled so you can bend all those notes. And I seem to have been doing nothing but left-handers for the last few months actually, so I'm very familiar with or comfortable doing lefties right now. Boing. Pretty much in tune. Let's get the tuner out. Oh, my sticky tape has come off. Doesn't really stick very well. That's that patch of goo. So, note to self: don't try that in future. Okay. Hey, I'm running on batteries only. Are you all right up there? Yeah, you're still fully charged for once. Amazing. Okay. Yeah, output, no. Input, yes. Let's have a turn up. Yeah, I think we're on all of these. I think I might have set them before. I don't like that metal string tree. That's one thing I would change to improve this. Yeah, that's good. Tusk string trees would be much better, but that'll be another 10 quid added to it. So, you know, the price then starts to go up away from, quite a long way away from the price shown on the Thomann website for one of these straight out of the box. Of course, you don't get the tusk nut and you wouldn't get the tusk string trees and so on. But, you know, often if you don't know the difference that makes, then it won't necessarily sound like a valuable upgrade to you worth paying for. So we have to be kind of realistic. So just to set this as a downward only tremolo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just remove, I'm going to slack off the trim claw screws a fair bit. They're quite hard to get to. This one's slightly sideways for some reason. It's alright, it's coming out. They're going in a little bit of a diagonal. So what I want to do is just bring it back out to relieve the pull onto the bridge, so that we get a gentle downward push without too much force being required by the player. Okay, so if we line this up, come on. Still quite stiff, so we'll bring it out some more. You can hear the slight ping of the string trees, the strings going past the string trees, which is, like I say, why I don't like it. It's not in the nut because that's tusk and it's cut pretty light and low. That's still too stiff. So we've got quite a lot of springs I should say, on here. So we can probably come out a long way before it will start to lift up. And we just need it to sit. We need the tension just enough to stop it lifting, and then you'll have the lightest downward touch if you want to use the tremolo. So it's still level. A little bit of backwards pull. There we go, that's the stiffest it will go. These things tend to cut themselves a little bit of a thread, or continue cutting thread if you wind them round to exactly where you want them. Soft metal. Let's see. Okay, a little bit of up. Can never tell with this whether it's the screws that are pulling forward, causing it to sit forward, or whether it's coming forward, because it should be a gentler action than that. If it still feels a bit too stiff. Let's see how much further it comes up. What we don't want is it to come too. See, it's lifting up now. I've got a feeling this is only 3 springs. I've got a feeling these are too tight, so I'm going to slacken this off a minute. Just for a second. Yeah, partly the reason, when you see the strings, these butterfly string trees don't really even hold them straight. They kind of go off at funny angles, which isn't ideal, or slightly wonky angles. I'm just going to lift all of these up to about 0.5 millimetre above the surface, so I know that there's plenty of room and they're not pulling from the front of the tremolo bridge plate down. I don't want that to happen. I want this thing to move move around those screws easily. That's about right, actually. Okay, so now, problem is when I tune this up, okay, that means the plate's coming up a little bit. Can hear it pinging on those useless trees. Okay, so this is sitting up a little bit, so I am going to go back in, and it seems like, well, there's only a certain amount of smoothness we're going to ever get out of this, I'm afraid. It'll be essentially very slightly floating, but only by just enough to hear it. A little bit of backwards movement. I'm just going to double check these slots while I'm at it. Just make sure there is no grabbing at all. Not that there is with this tusk. 16. And a G. This is a 24. Can hear the strings slightly pinging on those. I don't like them at all, but we're sort of stuck with them because to do otherwise would be, I say, more money. Maybe just try and take the pressure off a little bit. Okay, that's good. Right, there we are. So that's done. Oh, not quite done. There is a house. No, there is a... That's what I don't like about those either. Give me a Wilkinson any day. Let's put the plate back on. So there we have it. We are done for this guitar, and I'll do a little bit more tidying up and then we're off in about an hour's time. And this is coming home with me to go. Well, maybe I should photograph it here, since that's actually what I should do. Absolutely what I should do. I should give myself space to do it. Let's have a think where's going to be good. I've got plenty of stands, so it could be up on here, but there's perhaps not so good because there's a bright light above. What do you think? Maybe on the bench is still probably the best idea. Rightio. So I think what I'll do is move a fair few of these here things out of the way. Where did you come from? You came from up there. The optic came from over there. You can now go back in here. You can go back in there. lot can go in your home. You can go on there, sort of. Tapes, 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 tapes. Things, metal things, sticky on the wall things. God, I love this. Everything just sticks on the wall. How wonderful. You go on there. You go on there. Spare thing. You never lose anything because it's now stuck to the wall. Alright. Okay, so that's it. All done. And we'll do some photos. But thank you for watching. See you soon.